Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good evening. We're excited to have you all join today. Hello, Robert, Ryan. We see you in the chat. Megan, Cody. Very welcome, everyone. We're excited to have you today. We'll be covering, on today Adobe Live session, we'll be covering photo editing in Photoshop with our special guest, artist, storyteller, Dana Chang. I'm your host today. I'm Lisa Ngo, product manager for the Lightroom Classic team. So you've got Lightroom, Classic, and Photoshop experts here in the chat and live. So all throughout the session, feel free to pop in your questions in the chat and we'll be happy to answer them. And we'll be especially excited to get a sneak peek behind Dana's process as she, well, I'll let her explain that. But first, let's all welcome Dana. Dana, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. Can't complain. It's a beautiful day here in Oakland, California.
Yeah, it feels good that the weather's like starting to warm up. You know, for a while it felt like spring didn't want to come, but I'm seeing warmer temperatures everywhere now. It's very nice.
Yeah, for sure.
Saying hi to the chat, a few more people. Hi from Norway. Wow, thanks for joining. This is super exciting. I'm joining here from California, Orange County, but usually based out of San Francisco. And Dana, you're based out of Oakland, is that correct?
Yes, that is true.
Awesome. Okay, well, before we get started, and if you're just joining now, again, today we're going to be covering editing and printing lifestyle photography with Dana Chang, and she'll be showing us all her good and super cool process in Photoshop. But first, I'll go over some housekeeping items. If you haven't already, check out the new Photoshop challenge. It happens every day at 9 a.m. Pacific time with Sam Peterson. And this morning's challenge, I believe, is I missed this. But he was adding a meerkat into a background. And he's doing this challenge all the way till June 4th. And if you get to try the challenge, the daily challenge is for 9 days. It's a great opportunity to connect with the Discord community, as well as submit and share your results and get feedback from peers. And by the time June 4th comes around, you'll be a Photoshop rock star. So check it out every morning if you haven't already. All right. Welcome from Sweden and Poland. So great to have you. And Brazil. Wow. This is awesome. We're so happy to have you. Okay. Now, Dana, we'll turn over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. My name is Dana Mariko Chang. I am a freelance photographer and artist based in Oakland, California. And since I'm freelance, that means that there's a really wide range of things that I could be doing during any given week. Most of that's photography. So that could be food photography, e-commerce, or portraiture. But I also take on other freelance projects. And so if anyone has looked at my Behance, then you'll probably see that there's a lot of like design and illustration on there actually also. And during the pandemic, I've also taken on quite a bit of illustration work, which has been an interesting change of pace, but fun regardless. It was a little more COVID safe than photo shoots to be alone illustrating. And for context, I graduated from, the Maryland Institute College of Art. That was, 2015, with a BFA in photography and a concentration in sustainability and social practices. And I had actually applied intending to be a painting or drawing major. So I have kind of all these different mediums in my background that I still enjoy partaking in. But I ended up pursuing photography because I had a mentorship with a food photographer here in San Francisco. And that developed from being a mentee to a production assistant to photo assistant. And then I ended up producing for him for quite a bit. And all the while still pursuing my own freelance photo on the side. So kind of a lot going on, a lot invested in the photo industry. But yeah,
Wow.
it's just a lot of love for photo.
That's super cool, super cool. And for those who don't know, Dana has also been published a few books, photo books. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So those were two projects that I worked on in college that explored Baltimore's local food community. And so I photographed and documented, interviewed urban farmers, chefs, and like food purveyors, I guess is the word. And those were really fun projects, and it really got me connected with a lot of people in Baltimore and their dedication to sustainability in that city. So the first book is called How to Eat Meat. And the second book is called Baltimore's Bounty. And both of those are on my Behance as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I of course, I did a ton of cyber stalking. And I love your website. I absolutely love your website and your work. So everyone, if you haven't checked it out, highly recommend it. I mean, she has it open here. And she's going to walk us through it, but definitely check it out. Give her a follow on Behance, Instagram. I really love what you said about food as a connector. And that really resonates. It really does bring a lot of people together.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry. I can give a tour of my website now, actually. So we can start with my food portfolio, but this is kind of just an overview of some things that I've been shooting in the last few years to give you an idea of, a lot of this is actually natural light, but I've been more recently shooting with strobes, which we'll see some of that work in a bit. But I love anything that has this shadow play. That's one of my favorite images. Yeah, it's really all just about making food look as colorful, enticing, delicious as possible. So yeah, that's a good idea of my food photography. This was a very, it felt dangerous to shoot this one. Okay, so then we can look at let's see. This is my film photography, which we'll be editing today. And so a lot of this is just me bringing a camera along to my day-to-day life. There's not usually any specific project in mind, but again, just trying to capture specific moments that I love. And this is one, I think we'll edit this one today, but this one was taken in Bodega Bay at like 6 a.m. Sometimes those early hours are the best time to shoot. But yeah, so that kind of gives you an idea of some of the things that I like to shoot and film.
So beautiful, so beautiful.
Thank you.
And I knew it was a mistake not to eat breakfast before this.
Yeah, I gotta load up on some tangerines or something. I have a lot of citrus in my work too. Yeah, so that's my film photography. So we'll get some more in-depth views on that. And then just really quickly, I wanted to show, this is a project that I've been working on the last couple months using strobes. But I really wanted to explore like what drew me to photography specifically as a medium and what makes it different than drawing or painting, and thinking about like how can you warp your perspective, or how can you shift things so that it's like this one single moment in time, like you're freezing it. And so I was really inspired by these oilcloth designs that I've been seeing around, and wanted to create some images that just had kind of, I call the project Wavy as kind of a work in progress name, but it's it's kind of
Wow.
funky, but yeah, it's been fun experimenting with that too, because it feels like a departure from my normal natural light style. Yeah, so
I love it. I love it.
thank you. So yeah, so that's my work. And then I guess we can move into what we'll be working on today and tomorrow.
Yeah. Could you tell us, how about we give everyone an intro on what we're doing today and what they can expect for tomorrow?
Sure. So today we will be working on editing high-res film scans in Photoshop, and tomorrow we'll be tweaking them and printing them live. Fingers crossed our printer behaves. Sometimes they can be a bit mercurial. Anyone who's ever printed knows this to be true, but I do have some other prints that we can talk about as well, even if it's acting up. But yeah, so today will be a lot of kind of zooming in super far into photos and making sure that everything is looking a-okay for print quality. But yeah, so this is an overview of some of the scans that I have available for us to work on in the next couple of days. These are all, so I'll be working in Photoshop. This is in Lightroom, which is Lisa's expertise. But these are all low-res scans that I've gotten from a lab out here in the East Bay. And so when I process film, I will send it out to this lab and get it developed. And then they'll also provide me with low-res scans, which is usually, I can tweak enough for Instagram, but if I want to print them for any reason, they really can't get much larger than, God, like an 8x10 is probably max, honestly. And I can show, I'll do this tomorrow, but I'll show the size difference of what these scans, what you can get out of them. But yeah, we can just go through some of these images one by one. All these have been shot in the last couple of years. But these, again, are all in film, either 35 or 120. And you can kind of see also, even with just low-res scans, we can go to this one. It kind of, I mean, admittedly, my exposure wasn't perfect on this. But ideally, like, I mean, Lisa, I'm sure you're also familiar that with digital photography, you have a lot more flexibility in your dynamic range and what you can pull out of shadows and what you can tamp down with highlights. But with these low-res scans, you can't really push it too much. It's kind of like, even if the information might be there in the negative, it doesn't always come through with like a low-res JPEG scan. And so we can be talking about those differences as well as we move along.
Before we go on, do you have a favorite camera or camera of choice for 35 or 120? What are these shots taken on?
Well, so my favorite camera right now is it's a 120 medium format, Mamiya 7. I've been really enjoying using that. It's a really great travel sized medium format film camera because a lot of the times they can be kind of bulky or heavy. But we were talking about this earlier, but when I went to Banff, I brought both my 35 millimeter and my Mamiya, and the Mamiya it's so light and the shutter is so quiet that it's just like an excellent camera. And yeah, it creates beautiful images too. So this one was shot on a Mamiya, on the Mamiya that I have. And those are kind of tricky to find. You have to look for a good source on eBay now. It's like you have to like read where it's coming from and, you know, all the details and make sure it's tested and, you know, whatnot. But it is worth it. Yeah.
It looks worth it. I mean, this image is selling it.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, what do you like to shoot on, Lisa? Because you shoot film too.
Yeah, so I just started film like 2 years ago, very new, and also experiencing overexposure. Like,
Yeah.
so I'm really excited to like see how you handle that and manage that in Photoshop. But I've been shooting on a Nikon F3. Love it. Love working on multiple exposures, and recently just have been borrowing a Hasselblad 1000F.
Ooh.
And that is my introduction into 120. And so far, it's really cool. I love the little like mechanics. We were talking about this earlier. but film really like places you in the moment, and
For sure.
it definitely makes it special. Now, when you're so I heard you went to Banff and you had your 120 and your
Mhm.
35. Did you also have your digital camera with you?
No, I don't know. I didn't bring my digital that time. Sometimes I really do have to decide when I'm traveling which cameras to bring with me because it does take up luggage space. Just because I generally try to travel light and try to fit everything in one backpack. Um, so I mean, two cameras already is if you want to make sure they're packaged and they're protected, then it does take up quite a bit of space. But yeah, sometimes I'll bring like I have a Sony A7, which is pretty compact, but the battery life is not that good. So it's a little bit hard to bring that for traveling because you'll be shooting for like half a day and it will be like, I'm tired, I need to rest. So I mean it's lightweight, which is great for like a full frame camera, but it's I mean, I'm sure there's technology now that there's better Sony cameras now. I got that, I think, in 2018, maybe. So,
Ooh, yeah. So basically, you didn't give yourself back problems when you went to Banff. That's great.
no, yeah, my back was great during that trip.
Do you, I have a quick question in the chat before we continue on. I'd love to, see what you have to do. But Bianca asks, what would you recommend for a beginner film camera?
Oh, gosh. That's a good question. I mean, what honestly, like I didn't really do so much research in that because I feel like, and this is maybe true for a lot of photographers I know, their first camera is usually something that's handed down to them from their parents. So, gosh, the first camera that I started out with was my great uncle's Nikon, like F2, maybe. I've tried it, or I forget exactly what the letter combination was, but the light meter was on top and it was super heavy. I don't know if there's like a particular model I would recommend to newbies.
I I would I
um,
would like plus one that the Nikon F2, FM2, those are really great.
yeah,
Uh, really solid cameras, and I think
yeah,
still very, very popular, both for beginners and for intermediate.
great, yeah. The camera that I'm shooting on now for 35 is my dad's old like Olympus OMD something like that. OMD 2. I forget exactly. All the letters get a little bit jumbled in my head. But that's a pretty lightweight one and very easy to use. And I've never had any problems with it. And the battery lasts forever, which is great. Like it doesn't eat up the light meter doesn't eat up a ton of battery, which is good. But as you can see, sometimes the exposure is not perfect. So it takes a
That's
little tweaking
awesome.
sometimes.
Well, that's why we're here, right?
I know. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, this is a double exposure that I did with the Mamiya, which is a great feature of that as well. But
Wow.
that's kind of an intense self-portrait. um, and then let's see, we have lemons. Here's that image in Banff that we were talking about earlier. Although technically I think it's out on the outskirts of Banff. If anyone recognizes where this is, please feel free to throw that out there because I am forgetting and I feel a little embarrassed about that.
Sings Mountains poster. If you recognize this mountain, please say it in the
Yes.
chat.
Yeah. Comment below. Yeah. Let's see. Some of these photos are my grandmother. She doesn't really like being photographed. So it's a lot of me trying to be sneaky about taking her picture without making her feel too shy. This is in Japan. If anyone recognizes it, let us know in the comments also. Yeah.
Location trivia. Love it.
Yeah. Little quizzes for y'all. Oh yeah, again, you can kind of see this low res stand. It's like not totally cropped correctly. You can see like the edge of the negative. And then this is kind of exposed in a funny way. But that's totally editable with the high res versions that we have now. So yeah, that's kind of a good overview of what we'll be working on. I thought we could start with this Banff image because I would love to show the difference first between the, let's see, I'm going to quit out of this. I also love that Lightroom is like, do you really want to quit? It's like, you can't quit me.
Yeah, we've got attachment issues.
Yeah. Let's see. Let me open up this Banff image. Okay. So usually when I edit, I'll start, and sorry everyone if I've been told that since I'm using such a large display, things can look a little bit small. So if anyone needs me to explain things more in depth or show or do more circling with my cursor, then I'm happy to do that. And if anyone needs me to slow down also. But my editing process is very straightforward and pretty simple actually, because as you can see, I'm not really doing any compositing. I am pretty much trying to make the image just look as natural as possible and as true to my own memory, and then just removing things that I don't want in my memory as much. So usually I start with levels. And so this is a high res image that my good friend Eric Sanchez scanned for me. He has a beautiful Hasselblad Emicon scanner that he's very generously helped me out with a lot of my scans, so that I can print them kind of a lot larger. And you can kind of see in the background of, I don't know if you can see in my little box window, but I have some of the larger, oh, thank you. Some of the larger images printed up here. Just these were some test prints that I did, and they still need some tweaking, but that'll give you an idea. Like you can kind of see down here. Yeah, so that's kind of like more or less what you can get with a low res scan, and then this is what you can get with a high res scan. So that's scale size is complete, and you could even print larger.
That's super helpful, because sometimes I'm like, what does this mean? Like when I read the pixels or the resolution, I'm like, what exactly does that give me? So seeing that visual comparison, it's super helpful.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. You know, I because it looks like pretty good on your computer, you know, and especially on Instagram, you don't really notice that you're missing all of that information because it's so small when you look at it. It's like a tiny thumbnail in comparison. But once you start zooming in, it's pretty incredible what you can see. Like even in this photo, I didn't realize that there are people in it, and until I started zooming in, and we'll zoom in, don't worry. And we'll honestly clone stamp some of them out. But yeah, so we'll start by, I was going to say, but so Eric, normally when if I were to scan these myself, then you would start with a negative, which would be this inverted, which would look like this. And to invert that, you just do Apple I as the shortcut. So, but that's kind of a basic thing, but Eric has kindly already done that for me. And he also did a little bit of leveling out for me, but we're going to do a little bit more. So we just created a new levels layer here. And in our little properties thing, I try to bring it up the shadows up here. And then I bring down, or I bring up the shadows. I guess it's inverse in my head, just so that you kind of get a little bit more brightness contrast. So you can see the difference there. And then something else that I like to do often is I like to just have, let's see, I'm going to bring this reference image in Photoshop just so that we have it. I just like to have this kind of in the back so that I can kind of refer back to it. And like what I'm noticing in this scan is that it's pretty green, and I remember it being more like with more red tones and yellow. And so that's something that I'll keep in mind as I'm color balancing as well. But yeah, we could even like add more contrast to this.
And real quick, I saw a question from Chems Edine. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, but will you be going over color grading and the details of the color grading for this photo?
By color grading, do you mean color balance? Because I will be doing color balance, and I'm about to do that now, actually.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah. So one way to do that in levels is, I was kind of playing around with this yesterday. I don't often do it this way, but one way you could do that is by selecting this middle eyedropper and kind of like, let's see, getting around to somewhere that's kind of like a mid-gray tone. And sometimes it's just like kind of doing it by eye. Like that looks better. And I mean, landscape photographers know this also to be true. When you are looking at a mountain, different grades of mountains that are further and further away, they get more cool, the cooler tone. So when I see something that looks cooler tone in the back, that makes sense to me. But you also don't have to do it that way. Another way you can do it is by just manually going in. And so this reads very cyan blue to me. And so I'll just go in and add like red. I'll add some of this, and then it starts to look a little bit green. So I'll kind of shift that, but it takes a lot of tweaking. And so we'll probably just be doing this for a little bit. And sometimes, honestly, I'm sure anyone who's been, I have a lot of pals from college that we used to have all these woes over color balancing, because you would think that it's color balance and then you would return to it 5 minutes later and you're like, holy crap, I can't believe that I thought that was right. It's just because you're staring at it, and then you realize that that was very wrong. So yeah, we'll just be playing around with this for a little bit.
Totally. Every time I walk away from an edit and I come thinking that it's done, I come back and like, wait a second.
Yeah, like what was I thinking?
Yeah, what was I thinking?
Yeah,
surely
no
I didn't have that many drinks before I started photo editing.
Yeah.
Just a quick reminder, if you have any questions about Photoshop or Lightroom, feel free to put them in the chat, and we are looking and we will respond. And we've got great moderators too that can help out. So let's bring on those questions.
Lisa, do you edit a lot of your images, or how do you process your images?
I do. So I'm embarrassed. I actually don't use Photoshop, even though this is a Photoshop stream. So this is exciting because now I get to learn about the other side. But I'm also a landscape photographer, wedding photographer, and the batch processing has always just been enough for me in Lightroom. So Lightroom Classic is my go-to gal, and I've been using that for at least 12 years now.
Oh my gosh. That makes sense, because, with wedding photography, you have so many images. It's like, how can you possibly, to edit them one by one in this way is insane. So it's like, that totally makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I was going to quickly show, so this is zoomed in, we're at 50%. We can zoom in even further. So here we have some people that you can see that are running up the glacier. And I am pretty sure that that was not allowed because, let's see, where is it? I think this is a sign that says, don't run up the glacier also. But there's some people, naughty people doing it anyways, that we will erase them momentarily. But I was kind of blown away because I didn't really, it reminds me of how big this mountain was in comparison if you see these tiny people in that little corner. But then just for comparison, we're just going to zoom in at a similar, oh God, when I got this, see, now we're just seeing straight up boxes of pixels, but let's do a quick comparison. Like, I don't, it's pretty insane what the scanner can accomplish. And these negatives are, I mean, granted larger because it's 120. So they're probably more like that big as opposed to 35, which is like that big. But the information that you can get is pretty insane from a high res scan. So thank you, Eric, for your help in this mission of mine to scan all of my film.
We had someone submit a response. Colin said, is this the Athabasca Glacier? I might be saying that wrong.
Oh, Colin. Yes, he would know because he was with me on this trip. Thank you, nice. Colin.
Good job, Colin.
I'm trusting you, Colin. I would say that that's probably correct. So I think this is a good stopping point for color balance. We can get into dust spotting next. There's a couple different ways to do this, and a lot of people probably are familiar with using the dust spotting filter. I believe that's under, dust and scratches. That's under the noise menu, tab section. But I personally don't like using that. I find that it softens the image, and it's very smart, and it does remove a lot of the dust, but I think I'm a little bit old school, and I like to stamp out all of the dust by hand. So it's, some people might say it's tedious, but it's really great if you have music going and you have just a TV show going and music, or you're doing it with a friend, then it feels a little less tedious. But what we can see here is a very large scratch across the entire, oh gosh. Okay. Do you guys still see that? That's where it ends. It looks like. So there's a very long scratch. It's a little bit more visible here. Looks like it could be like a spider web to the biggest spider ever. Oh, apologies for that beeping noise, by the way. That'll happen periodically if anyone can hear that. If anyone knows, that's a like light box that you can view prints in. And sometimes I think it beeps to let you know it's still on. I'm not sure. It's always beeped when I've had it on. But apologies if that's bothering anybody.
All good.
But yeah.
All good.
Okay, cool. So then on these images also, these little white spots are dust on the negative. And so it's very easy to remove that. But for demonstration's sake, I will just do a quick noise, dust and scratches. Let's see, and this is a nice preview. Let me find, okay, so you can kind of see when I click on it, that's without the dust and scratches. And can people see that, or do we need me to zoom in a little bit more? Is that, oh gosh.
See that? Yeah.
Oh, it didn't like me zooming in. But you can kind of see the contrast. It kind of dulls the dust and the scratches. Let me see if usually it can get it pretty well, but in this case, I mean, there's still artifacting of it. So, okay.
Yeah, okay. I think I can see. I can make out the contrast still.
Okay. We'll just apply this for now. And then I'll turn on and off the layer, and you can kind of see, let's see, it's pretty, let's see. I want to find a section where it's really, yeah, I mean, it doesn't even really.
I like how Brayden puts it, disrespect that dust.
Yeah. But something I've also noticed and I was playing around with this the other day, is that sometimes it takes out detail that I didn't intend for it to take out. Let's see. Although it looks okay now. Let's see, where was I seeing that? Sorry if I'm making anyone car sick. Oh, it's okay. It's pretty mild though. I'm just gonna delete that layer though, because that's not generally how I like to work. So one thing that you can do for clone stamping is, I guess, no, let me go back. Because I think what might be helpful is if I just increase the intensity. So normally I like to do at this setting, but maybe just for demonstration's sake, where are we here? Okay, so that completely took that out. You can see that's gone. So we'll just say okay for now.
And what would you do if it takes out too much, like more detail than you would like?
Well, so one solve that you could do is you could sharpen it after, but I feel like when you do a bunch of layers like that on top of each other, it kind of makes the image look less real, or like it looks like there is a filter on it. So I don't love to do that. Okay, great example. So I'm just going to turn this on and off, and you can see that it's literally taken rocks out of the mountain, like tiny. It's like, oh, that's all dust. So it's like really softening it. And then I could sharpen on top of that to try to bring back some detail, but then it kind of gets this weird look to it. I don't, like here it looks more like detailed, and it just looks kind of like a smoothing feature, But I mean, I went a little bit hard just for exaggeration's sake. Photoshop is a great tool.
It's like
But
that age slider, but for these mountains.
yeah, the mountains don't want any wrinkles. So I understand. But yeah, sometimes it doesn't even get all the dust too. So I'm just going to delete this and we're just going to do it from, oops, not double it. My God. We're just going to start from scratch. And Bianca, I believe, who is in the chat, she showed me this great trick, which is if you want to be stamping, instead of creating a brand new layer by duplicating your base layer, which increases your file size a lot, what you could do is start a blank layer and then under stamp here, the shortcut key is S. Just make sure that you're selecting, it says sample current and below, as opposed to current layer or all layers. I guess you could do all layers, but current and below. And then make sure that your layer is on top, your blank layer. And then once you do that, then we can go in and you press option click to sample. And then you'll see that I, in my cursor in the bottom left, that I've picked up some of that sky. And so now I can use that to just kind of like heal over that. So yeah, that's a very easy way to get rid of some things.
Amazing. And this is sensor dust. Is that correct?
This is probably dust it could be on the negative, or it could have been on the negative when I was shooting it, or it could be on, or on the sensor, sorry. But it also could have happened during the scanning process. Usually when you're scanning film, you have to really like, kind of go really hard on the, the rocket blower, make sure that everything's out of. But I mean, those negatives are so small. It's like, how can you can't get it all. So that's what this tool is very helpful for. But yeah, just kind of looking for anything that's blaringly a contrasted white dot. So like this. And I mean, it also depends on what scale you're going to be printing at, because if you're going to be printing at like, I don't know, like a 4x5 inch thing, you could use a small scan, low res scan, and you don't need to be doing this completely crazy editing process. But let's just show image size for context. So I mean, this is at 4,000 resolution, so maybe let's bring this down to 350. Taking a sec to think about it. Yeah, so this is at 24 inches naturally. You can kind of bump it up if you want and kind of see how it looks on when you're printing it. We will be printing to a printer that maxes out at 17 inches on the shortest side. So I bet I can bring this down. I'll just bring this down to 16.5 for now. Oh, no, don't. No. Yeah, okay. So I'll just bring that down now. Normally, I would suggest keeping images in their highest resolution possible when you're editing, just so, because you never really know when you're going to have the opportunity to print something at a really large scale. And so I like to edit in the largest possible so that if I have the opportunity to print on like a 24-inch roll, that I can go for it, as opposed to like editing in the low res scan and then do you know what I mean? Like it's a little bit, you can't apply those changes to an upscale or to a higher res image, but you can save as a smaller image and then print that way. Right. So yeah, I generally recommend to just edit in the largest possible. So yeah, we'll be doing this for a little while. Oh, I actually, if Bianca's still in chat, I hope she is. I have a question for her. Because with this trick of using the brand new layer, and not duplicating this bottom layer for clone stamping, I haven't found that is the case for content aware, which is another great tool that I love to use in Photoshop. And that usually just means selecting the things you don't want. And then the shortcut is Shift Delete. And then it's fill. So fill content aware. And you just say, okay, and then they're gone. And sometimes there's a little bit of remnant that's obvious to our eye. And honestly, I just kind of keep doing that until it looks a little bit less weird. You don't want really any straight lines or anything like that. But I mean, I think we could probably glean that it had something removed when we're that close, but we're going to be printing it. I mean, it's probably going to be more like this scale when we see the image, and you're not going to notice that there's like a little, what's the word? This part is there. But yeah, if Bianca wants to chime in, is there a way to have content aware fill while on a new blank layer, or do you have to duplicate the layer or do it on a base layer? Or yeah, Bianca's a retoucher for context. She's very I go to her for all my retouching questions. So
Bianca is in the chat.
Okay. If she's too shy, also I understand, but I would love to hear from her.
Bianca or anyone else. I'm sure we have a ton of other retouchers online and in the chat. If you know the answer to Dana's question,
my very specific question.
Okay, I see a response from her. So
oh, great.
Yes, you need pixels in the layer to be able to apply the content aware function so
Makes
that
sense.
it can pull from these surroundings.
Well, yep. So that's that. There's no workaround. Oh yeah, and another thing that I found here is a little bus. And I don't remember that being an option to go up there, but I am assuming they must have tours that go up. And then there's another, I think, bus that's going up this mountain. But I can't decide if I want to keep them in the frame. I think it's kind of nice for scale, maybe, but if anyone has any preferences in the comments, if you want me to eliminate the bus, I can.
Curious to see what, what's everyone's process like? Would you keep the bus? Would you remove it? Yeah. I think it's kind of cool. It's it's a little bit of it really just puts the whole image at scale. Like when you zoomed into that bus, I was like, that's a car toy. That's a toy. Sorry, toy bus.
Yeah.
But the fact that it looks like so tiny, it just shows how massive this scene was.
Yeah.
Eric says, or Colin says, bigger bus. All right, let's make that bus bigger then.
I don't know, Colin. You rascal.
David says scale helps. Robert says eliminate.
Ooh, gosh, tie.
Hayden, keep the bus. All right, some keeps.
Okay.
Let's get rid of it.
Maybe we can do addition to prints. One version of it will have the bus and one version will not.
I like that. Another Brayden, again, zoom and enhance the bus.
I'll just make the bus. I'll just only print the bus, actually.
That's why you have this high resolution, right? So
you need so you can just crop how you want.
Yeah.
You can see who this true star is. So yeah, this is very exhilarating, I'm sure, for a lot of people.
Do you ever use curves to also do color balancing?
Not often, to be honest. We can play around with it. Yeah, I find it a little bit too, what's the word? Maybe I'm just not finessed enough in it. Oh, oops. You can see all my clone stamping is on the other layer with the with the other color balance. So we'll just turn that off for now. But yeah, I find I have a little harder time with being accurate in it, but maybe it's just because I have to just like switch between them. Do you like using curves when you're in Lightroom?
I do. Yeah, there was someone had asked in the chat,
Oh yeah.
the difference between using curves and not. I do like using the curves in
What's
Lightroom.
your why is your preference in curves as opposed to anything else?
It does feel I it feels like I can get a little bit more control
Oh, interesting. We have
over
opposite feelings.
yeah, it makes me feel like I can get a little bit more control in the exact areas that I would like. Um, uh, and I mean, I would say I use on Lightroom, I like to use the color wheels as well.
Mm,
But so I like to do a little bit of a combination.
okay. Ooh boy. Yeah, so this is what I did with curves, I guess. Let's see how it compares. I wish there was a shortcut for alternating between having those on. Yeah, I mean, comparable. The contrast is a little bit more with the color balance one.
Yeah, the way you did it, I do like the result of the color balance better in Photoshop.
Yeah, maybe I'm just used to doing it with color balance, and so I'm like, but I mean, I feel like it accomplishes kind of similar things, but
with less steps too.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just gonna drag and drop that guy away.
Yeah, let's just forget about that.
Sorry, just delete that. Yeah.
So as Dana's like stamping out, question for you, Dana, but also for the chat. If there was like a filter to remove dust, would you use it in Photoshop or Lightroom? Would you trust it?
I mean, my instinct, as we know, is no, but I'm not opposed to it if it's, I mean, if I feel like there's not as much detail that it could take away by accident, then I'll go for it. But I think in this case, I have kind of a affinity to the idea of keeping as much detail as possible. Yeah. Can anyone see the scratch that I'm taking out, or does it just kind of look like, I'm not sure what the quality of zoom is on this. Maybe I'll go back to the mountain. Okay.
Yeah.
If I just look like I'm a crazy person, just like dabbing out nothing. One thing you want to be careful of with the clone stamping is that you can't, it's kind of, I prefer to kind of take samples, and this is just based on like years of noticing that if I were to do, say, sample here, and I think it would actually be okay in this scenario, but maybe I'll start here. If I take a sample from right above, and as opposed to doing like single little spots and just did like one thing, like you can kind of see it does a little bit, but I find that it's a little bit aggressive, and you'll get these kind of weird straight spots, and it makes it pretty obvious in my head that it was clone stamped or that you did some editing. And so I like to kind of just like grab little bits and pieces from wherever. Oopsie. You want to make sure you don't accidentally clone stamp the thing that you wanted to remove back into it. But yeah,
I imagine the process is a little bit like painting. I'm not a painter, but instead of like being meticulous on a canvas, we're removing pixels, covering pixels on an image. Some people said yes, they would use it, maybe not so much. Yeah, I think like you said, it
personal
depends.
preference.
Yeah, it would probably depend on the subject. And I think your point of concern about removing too many details or maybe the wrong details, I think that's a great point.
Right.
But some biters here, some Some people
Yeah.
might use it
I think
if we
a lot of
added it.
people are, yeah, I don't think a lot of people are wanting to do this meticulous step, but I find it to be very peaceful.
I have a feeling you're not alone.
Yeah. It's safe from the chaos of the world. Lisa, where do you get your film processed? Because you're mainly based in San Francisco, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, right now I've been taking it to Oscar's Photo Lab in San
Oh,
Francisco.
nice. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
heard good
if
things.
anyone's familiar. Yeah, they're great. They're great. And they're such nice people. Uh, I was on a Clubhouse chat recently with a bunch of film photographers as well, and I'm still new to the whole scene, but they were suggesting like, ask if um, you can like check out their lab and their process, and that's something on my to-do list is to bother the lab and be like, can you show me how you do this?
Have you
Once the
ever processed
pandemic
your own
ends.
film?
I have not. I started
Mm.
in digital photography
Hmm.
years ago, and this is my first time working with film. Eric, yes, you know Oscars as well. Awesome.
Oh God. Um, can I
And
ask what the price point is? Are we allowed to do that on this? I'm just curious to know how much it costs to process a roll of film. If Lisa can share, if Eric knows.
yeah, I will have to look it up exactly because I'm usually dumping a ton of rolls.
Mm,
Um,
that's the
and
way to do
uh,
it. More efficient.
and sometimes like going like this, like
Yeah.
take my
Yeah, I
card.
know. Yeah, I did the exact same. I mean, with the Banff trip, because I had both 120 and 35 millimeter. Yeah, same thing. I was like, I think I had like maybe 6 rolls, and I was like, oh God, I don't even want to know. Yeah, it's times like
Yeah.
that I'm like, oh, that would be convenient if I processed my own film. I did it for a class in college, but color film is more particular than black and white film in terms of processing. You need to have the like exact temperatures, and it's I don't know. And you have to be maintaining the chemicals. Like I think it's really worth it if you do a lot of processing, like if you're at a lab or if you shoot film constantly. But I think it's hard for people to maintain that. Ooh, is that a? This seems like maybe a hair. Very exciting. But I think it's hard to maintain processing when here's a good
Yeah.
example of something actually. So I accidentally just clone stamped to mimic another shape on the mountain. You can see this kind of around. I'll go back here and here, and that's something you really want to avoid. So that was a mistake on my behalf, but it's pretty easy to just get rid of it. But when you do have mimicking shapes, then that makes it pretty obvious that it's been edited. And that can happen really easily. So, but I mean, it's so small. Who would really know?
For those who are just joining, we are here with Dana Chang, and she is currently clone stamping out the dust spots in her image on a film scan. But today's session is about editing lifestyle photography with Photoshop. And then tomorrow we will go over, Dana will be printing her images and showing that process.
And I also remember because my family went on a trip to Japan, and I have a couple images from there too. Maybe at a certain point we can switch out to one of those. And I also brought my 35 and 120 and maybe shot like 8 rolls. And with the 120, for at least the Mamiya, you only get 10 frames out of each roll. So yeah, that processing fee really adds up. So
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I will check on the prices for Oscar. Everyone in the chat, like, do you shoot film? And if so, do you process your own images? Do you take it to a lab? What's your favorite lab?
I would love to know if anyone processes their own film. I would be so impressed.
Something that I always do, well, when I'm traveling and I just really want my roll to see my images, it's a digital habit. I'll find a local lab in the area I'm in and I will send it there. So people around the world, people in different cities, countries. If you have a favorite lab, please mention it because chances are if I'm there, I'll probably try to find your lab. Oh, and look, the bus is getting bigger. Love it.
That's just for fun. Let me. Oh yeah, I downloaded these brushes that are free, but very cool. This is not a photo, like a photo editing thing, but sometimes you can find. I keep getting these Instagram ads for them, but like sample kits of different brushes, and they can provide some really cool textures. I've never used them for photography, but they're pretty interesting for illustration. But I guess this is by a company called True Grit, if anyone's heard of them or has gotten, maybe you will get an Instagram ad for them now. But yeah, I just masked this so I can kind of, oops. Let's do a little softer.
Mega bus.
Yeah. Just so looks very natural. I guess that looks like yeah, mega buzz. Maybe we can add more. So it's like a little sea of them.
And I see a lot of folks only shoot digital.
Oh wow.
That's awesome. What Dana's working on right now, the like clone stamping is also really helpful for getting rid of camera sensors. I'm actually probably terrible at cleaning my sensor, so I would probably have 5 times more dust than this film scan right now.
Okay, Colin, here's your bus image. Gonna just say goodbye to those.
So after just jumping ahead, after you finish like clone stamping all the dust out, what would you do next?
I'd probably, let's see. Honestly, I'd probably step away from the image for a brief minute so that I can make sure my color is good. But I think it might be fun to try doing a different image just for now, because there is something else that I want to play around with. Maybe, let's see, what image should I do this for? Let's start with lemons. Okay, so this is a high-res version of this. We're gonna do our same levels. Just quickly bring that kind of up to what we like. Me. Oh, one thing that's interesting. So with this image, so it's pretty green, but you'll notice as I bring in magenta or red, it really darkens the shadows like up here. It seems like it just disappears, but even though that looks more accurate to the color. So something that, let's see if I can remember how to do this. We're going to duplicate that layer and then we're going to turn that into a smart object and convert. I always type in because I never remember where everything is. So this is a faster way to do that. But we're going to convert this to a smart object. It's hard to remember, you know. But yeah, so again, Bianca was just teaching me about this. But if you convert something into a smart object and use smart filters, then what you were noticing with the color balance and the levels layers that I was working with earlier, you kind of apply, or actually no, maybe more with dust. That's a better example. With the dust layer, you have your settings or you have your adjustments and then you apply it and then that's your layer. You're kind of stuck with that. But with smart filters, you can adjust them later, which is really nice. Kind of like, I guess, more like the color balance one, but we're going to do camera raw. So yeah, camera raw filter.
And that's really important when you like step away, come back, and you need to make those extra adjustments.
You're like, oh gosh. Let's see. Okay, so you can see I'm going to be adjusting the shadows and the blacks, but you can see as this is where it started. And if I bring it down, it really brings it down, but I can bring it up. let's just say, let's super exaggerate it just for our sake and just say, okay. And so you can see that brought it up a lot more. I'm going to turn on and off the layer. One thing that I've kind of had some trouble with, and maybe I'll experiment around with it today, is maintaining a realistic color in the shadows once I've done this smart layer or the smart filter. Because you'll see when I go back into shadows, if I want to add, there we go, magenta, maybe it takes a little extra tweaking, but it always has this kind of like two-toned visual to it that is hard for me to shake. Like these panels look very blue still, and then they'll look green. So I think the answer is to make a mask layer. Maybe, let's see. Let me just try one with saturation. No idea if this is the correct answer. I'm going to invert that mask and then paint in on the side. If there are any retouchers that have an opinion on this, feel free to share. But just to make this look a little more realistic and not like it's like a super greenhouse, I guess. Oh yeah, we're at 100% opacity.
I love this photo, and so do the people in the chat. Gorgeous image.
This is my view outside my kitchen window. It's I think some raccoons like to actually come through this. It's scarier at night. But yeah, so you can kind of see I'm turning on and off that layer. But maybe it'll like look really weird when I print it because it'll be so desaturated. But yeah, I guess my question is how to maintain accurate color after bringing up the shadows. But that would be my workaround. And it seems okay for now. Maybe the true tell will be tomorrow and we do some test prints and it looks like super gray. Yeah, but that's not bad. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And something that is also I like to do, maybe it's me like patting myself on the back. I like to group everything and then just turn on and off a layer just to be like, oh, okay, I can see where I started from and kind of readjust if need be. I also recommend generally labeling all of your layers, which I have not done. I'm not a good lead by example in this situation, but that's very helpful too. Yeah. Oh, one other thing that we'll be doing before we go to print is sharpening. And let's see. Oh my gosh, there's so much dust on this. But let's see. Let's just we're going to duplicate that. And then I'll merge it all together. Once it's ready. Okay. Merge layers.
For people who don't use Photoshop, what does the merging layers do?
Oh, okay. So Photoshop works in layers, and each one of these guys is a single layer. And so I'll like to, if I'm going to apply something that I want to all of the layers, if I'm kind of in the final stages, normally I would already have clone stamped and done everything, and I'd be kind of at more final stage at this point, that I merge layers, but it just groups all of these into one compact thing. And so it's a little bit easier to manipulate that one. It like just flattens it, not flattens in terms of like loses information, but it, God, what's the word? Merge is, I think, the best word for that. But it just combines it all so that it's in one manipulated layer that you can manipulate. And so I like doing that for sharpening purposes, usually. But yeah, what I'm noticing here is that there's sharpness on the leaf, but not as much back here. And we can get that by let's just rename this sharpen. It'll name it whatever. When you merge it, it'll rename it as, or it'll name it as whatever was the top layer. So even though it said hue saturation, that's not actually what it was. So yeah, we'll just do a quick, I like to use unsharp mask. Let's see. Oh, it's very subtle. I'm not even sure if everyone will be able to see this. Okay, I'm going to zoom in for everyone. Can everyone see? Or Lisa, maybe you're the only one who can tell me immediately. I'm clicking on and off.
It doesn't.
Do you see any?
No.
Like it's very subtle.
Yeah.
Maybe let me turn this up a little bit more.
Could you describe what we expect to see, or what you're seeing on your end?
Yeah, it just adds a little bit of clarity. And so what the unsharp mask adds sharpness basically. And so it adds a little more contrast and sharpness, I find. Are you still not seeing it? I bumped it up a little bit.
I can see it a bit now.
Like a little bit? Okay.
End. Yeah.
Okay. I'll just
People in the chat
for now.
Let us know if you can see it.
Sorry. So let's see. I've applied that now. It's very subtle.
But it does make a difference. It's subtle, but it's also apparent.
Okay, great. Yeah, I find that yeah, these subtle things really, it's funny. With print, it's all about making these subtle changes. But sometimes if I don't want the rest of the image to be sharpened, I mean, I'm okay with it in this scenario, but what you could do is just mask that out. And for people that don't use Photoshop and don't know what masks are, it's basically, how do I don't know the technical word, but it's, God, how do I describe it? It's kind of like all the information of what you've done on that layer is there, but masking allows you to paint in how much of that you see. And so perhaps it'll be a little bit easier to demonstrate on my color balance. But you saw it a little bit with my hue and saturation layer that I was using. But we'll just paint it in. And masks work in dual tones, so it's either black or white. And then you can kind of have gray space, so it's you change the opacity of it. But when you are editing in your mask, you want to make sure that you're let's see, when it's white, that means that it's applying to the entire image. And then when you invert it to make it black, and you'll see this color balance square turn black, then it's applying to none of it. And so if I only wanted to color balance, for example, just the lemons, which would be an interesting artistic choice, I could just do that by doing this. And so I'm using my paintbrush tool to bring in color there. And I wouldn't do it as sloppily as I'm doing now, but this is just for demonstration's sake. But that's how masks work. And you can turn on and off that layer mask. The shortcut key, very helpful, is Apple or Command, comma. But yeah, that's super helpful. So I love masks. Definitely always use masks. It's like the best insurance that you can have, because it's kind of like smart filters. If you step away and you're like, oh, that's very different than how I remembered it, then it makes it a lot easier to go back into it. And sometimes you don't even see, like, when I was enlarging that bus, like I thought I had gotten all of it, but then when I had sampled it and moved it down, I noticed that I dragged some of the mountain with me as well. And so masks make it really easy to just like erase that. And if you wanted it back, then you could. But yeah, masks always work in masks. That's what I learned.
It gives you so much more control.
And, a lot of flexibility.
But also in Lightroom as well. For anyone who's also a fellow Lightroom user. Also, If you're just joining in, welcome. Thank you so much for joining today's session. Um, we're here with Dana Chang, and she's showing us how she edits lifestyle photography with Photoshop. And tomorrow, which is the part 2 for this session, she'll be showing us how to print as well.
Let's see. I'm going to close out of this one now, and we can go into one of these orange images. This is an interesting example of some scan issues that I've been having recently. Eric and I were talking about this too. But let's see. You don't see it as much. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay, this is a great example. So a lot of dust, but here is some weird banding that you're seeing. And I mean, I feel like as you get higher quality, you just note it feels like when you paint the walls, or if you change the curtains, then you're like, I need to paint the walls too. Like there's all these new things that pop up that are like, oh, I need it. All these, I have to take care of all these things. I'm not sure if it's translating as well for Zoom, but there's some banding that's happening here. You can see I'm moving my cursor horizontally. You might be able to see kind of like a magenta stripe.
I
Lisa,
can
do you see
it.
that?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And it's also further down here. And then it has an alternating yellow stripe. And the only way that I could think of to remove it was pretty tedious. And that would be to manually paint in color balance for those specific stripes and not overlap. That being said, you could also just rescan it and try a different scanning technique, which is what Eric and I did. Well, Eric did it. I just mentioned that I was hoping that there was a workaround, but I think he ended up just removing like manually a blue filter or something. And Eric, you can correct me if I'm misremembering this scenario. But then that ended up fixing it. And yeah, these are older scans, so you can kind of see the banding, but that, yeah, this is more clear here. Yeah, so you can imagine painting that in. It's doable in Photoshop. Photoshop is a great tool, but it is much easier to start with like a solid scan. So just delete those for now. I'm gonna close that. I'm just gonna save this so that we can go back to that when we're printing. What should we do next? Oh, this is okay. Here's a good an interesting thing. So I scanned a lot of raw files back when I was in college through Hasselblad has a special scanning program. I forget what it's called, but it's not super compatible with any computer system anymore. So there are all these file types that I have now that are just called .fff, and I'm not sure what the optimal way of pronouncing that is. Is that like F or like, you know, because at least with TIFF, it's like, but F, if anyone knows, also comment below.
Yes, comment below if you know how to say this file type name.
Yeah. The workaround for this though, because you can't open it in Photoshop anymore. Normally you would be able to open that in Camera Raw through Photoshop, but you can't. And you just rename it to TIFF. And you say, yes, I want that. And then you can edit it. It's quite simple, but it, yeah, so this is a good example of what a negative looks like. Let's see. So we're just going to invert that. Look at these feet. Okay. And then let's see. Let me crop this. Let's just do 4:5 because I don't want to be looking at those feet anymore than I have to be. Let's just crop it there.
Joanne says you can use Focus to open the FFF file.
Is it FFF, Joanne? That's what I really want to know.
I think we all want to know how you properly pronounce it.
It reminds me of the whole GIF thing. I mean, I think I say GIF.
I say GIF, but
I think it's supposed to be GIF.
it angers some people. Yeah.
Well, it makes sense to be GIF because it's what graphics, right? It's not
Hmm.
graphics. So I don't know why it would be GIF.
Eric says also Imicon. It's an
Oh, for
Imicon
programs.
specific file type that can only be
Mm-hmm.
opened in the Imicon app. So two ways to open it, Focus or Imicon, um, or like Dana showed us, convert it to a TIFF file and it'll open.
Yeah, all these programs and their proprietary technology. They don't want. They're like, use us.
I know.
So silly.
So
Also, hi Joanne. Nice to see you in the chat.
just a reminder, we have great experts in the chat, and we are here with Dana Chang, artist, storyteller, and Photoshop expert. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We can talk about it with the other chat members. We can call it out here live. Let's hear them. Cool. I see a question from Tenzin. I'm sorry if I said your name wrong. Which software you use more, Photoshop or Lightroom for photo editing? Dana, you want to answer that? I can answer
I'm
after.
sorry, Lisa. Yeah, I have to say Photoshop, but it's I do sometimes I'll use them together because I mean with batch editing, it's a lot easier to use Lightroom. That's undeniable. So if I sometimes I'll do well, I guess not anymore because of COVID, but I used to do some event photography and I mean similar to wedding photography. It was just much easier if I wanted to have a certain look to all of those images to just be able to apply that to like 100 images was so much easier in Lightroom than to do it in Photoshop. That being said, I just find it easier in general. Like if I need to remove glare or if I need to remove something from the image, I think it's just because I think I started learning Photoshop when I was like in middle school, so I feel like it's very ingrained into my system. That being said, there's a lot that I also don't know, so I'm sure that I'll continue to ask questions of the audience. But yeah, Lisa, I'm assuming it sounds like Lightroom for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's Lightroom was my first language, my first love, right? So I've always just stuck with Lightroom, and I love it. And I do a lot of batch processing for event photography, weddings, um, and we do have tools to do a bit of retouching in Lightroom as well.
Mm-hmm.
It the spot healing uh, and our masks definitely gets me to my endpoint, and like so far, I have had no problems. You know, being able to achieve what I want. However, what you just showed with like the film scans and showing like that color banding, that's something I'd probably have to learn Photoshop to process. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
excited to like I feel like I've learned so much already in like
Oh,
this
good.
this like just over an hour. And personally, I'm excited to take a look at my film scans after this and see what little blemishes I can improve on for print because I haven't been there yet, but I do want to print eventually. So
Mm-hmm.
this is like the perfect workshop for me.
Yeah, print is, I mean, I love giving prints for gifts, honestly. It's like such a convenient gift for any artist, I feel like, to give art. And yeah, I totally recommend. There are some print labs in the city also that you could send to. I'm forgetting the names of them, but I'm sure people have probably some experience with them in the audience. But there are some really great print labs that are doing some like COVID safe processing for people. I know my friend Pete I don't know if he's in the audience, but he was telling me about one where you can even upload your file like directly on their website, and they'll give you an estimate for how much it'll cost based on different parameters you set, like size or paper type and things like that. Oh yeah, that's another thing that I just remembered is paper type often will dictate how you edit your image as well. And so I'm planning on printing on matte paper tomorrow, and matte paper has a tendency to really suck up all of your shadows and just turn them all to black. With luster paper or glossy, it's not as bad, but matte, it really feels like there's like a drop off point that's very sudden. And so I find that I have to overcompensate and bring up the shadows quite a bit in certain spots. Otherwise, it'll be like very black. And I can show you guys tomorrow, but actually, so I'm editing the image that's back here, but
Great. Yeah. Show us what you're planning to do here.
So I'll probably see. I definitely have to color balance, as you can see. It's very green. Let's see. There's also, what I'm noticing is there's a lot of shadows here and here that my immediate instinct is that's going to drop off completely dark when I print it. And so I'm going to have to really bring up the shadows. I'll probably do that in the Smart Object camera filter. Here is Camera Raw, sorry. This is also going to be completely dark. And I also remember, I'm noticing, I think it's, on this backdrop, this is a photo of my mom also. She might be watching. A formal portrait of her. I think the sun was reflecting off the green. And so this backdrop ended up being a bit green once I color balanced it. And so I had to manually also fix that in Photoshop, which I'm sure you could also do in Lightroom. There's so much I haven't explored in Lightroom. So Lisa, you're inspiring me to try it out more.
Yeah, well, I'm always happy to answer any questions, and we can do a little session later.
Yeah. Oh yeah, another reason that the shadows really come down is because when you adjust the color here, it darkens even more. So that's another thing. You can kind of see green here on one side, and then it's more like blue on this side. It's pretty subtle, but that's something that we'll also need to take care of. A fun fact about this photo also is you can tell the quality of light is a little bit different on my mom's face. And then also the focus is on her hands and not on her face. So we'll need to sharpen her face a little bit more. But the quality of light here is a lot harsher. You can see here on her dress. And then on her face, it's much softer. And it's because when I was originally shooting this, I noticed that it was very directly on her face. And so I just put this plastic up in the bush, and that diffused the light on her face. And now that's part of the image, but I don't mind that being part of the story.
Yeah, I love it.
You have to do what you have to do sometimes.
I love the level of detail.
See, just gonna see.
Anyone in the chat print at home? Any home printers, or do we all take it to the labs and send it to the labs?
I would also love to know if anyone does print at home, what printer you have, because I'm so used to printing on Epson, but I am curious about, because I come to the studio to print, and I'm curious about I guess more affordable models that are also smaller, because this will be printing on a 4900 Epson 4900 tomorrow, which here I can rotate a little bit. It's very big. Can people see? It's just obscenely big, and there's no way I could just have that in my living room. And so there's smaller printers that you can get, but I'm curious to know what people are using. And you'd think that it could take a larger roll because it's so long. It's like maybe 2.5 feet wide. but the longest roll it can take is 17 inches. So I used to print on roll printers that could take like 24 to 40 something inches. And that was so fun. I miss those college days when I had access to that. Any home printers with a 40-inch roll? I want to know.
Well, we have Eric who says he does print with an Epson 3880.
I actually have one right next to me as well. I find that's more reliable than the 4900 if anyone has experience with that too. It's I was just talking to, I think Cody might be in the audience, but I was talking to him the other day. And the 4900 can sometimes just give you an error for kind of no reason, but the 3800 or 3880 is like it can be turned off for like 2 months and then print out a perfectly good print the next day. But yeah, 4900 is kind of like a little teenager. I feel like that's a bit more picky, temperamental perhaps. See, and then I'm actually going to move my stamping layer to below color balance and levels because I want to do current and below. And when I did that on the Banff image, it included all of the color balancing stuff, which I don't really want. So we'll do it a little bit better this time. Look at my mother's sweet face. We're going to zoom in really far. I'm sorry, Mom.
Mama Chang.
Yeah.
Looking that beautiful.
Yeah, that's what we call her.
Joanne says, yep, 4900 is moody indeed.
Joanne, do you print a lot at home, or what do you do with your 4900? How often do you print?
You know, I while we wait for her answer, one thing I wanted to get during quarantine was a printer because from what I heard, you know, you have to be printing regularly to keep things up. And if you're going to be home all the time, I feel like that's the best time to just print constantly. And also because we can't be in touch with friends in person, I felt like mailing people print gifts, like as a letter, like going back to snail mail would have been fun. That is, you know, I do regret not doing that earlier, but after this session, I am inspired to get my print going.
Yeah, there's no time like the present, Lisa.
So
no
true.
regrets. Yeah.
So true.
One thing that I find is also helpful when I'm mailing prints is I just invested in a bunch of little, I think you can get them compostable versions too, but you can get plastic sleeves that have like, you can like a sealant on like a little plastic envelope basically, but that keeps your prints pretty pristine in the mail. And I was kind of worried that the post office would have a problem with it, but I put the stamp on the inside of the print like a postcard, and then I slide that in a plastic sleeve, and they always arrive in like perfect condition.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, as a photographer and like you have all your friends and family, I just feel like it's a nice way to stay in touch.
For sure.
I have a question from Fairy. How do you set up your aperture for particular conditions? Maybe you can talk about the aperture for this image and then some of the other images that you shared.
Well, it depends on the amount of depth of field that I want and how much light I'm getting, perceiving. A lot of it will also depend on the film that I'm using too. I generally prefer to shoot with a Kodak Portra 400 ISO, and I will, let's see, I don't remember the aperture that I set on this image, but I find that the depth of field is really nice on the Mamiya, regardless of how small my aperture is. It still feels pretty nice. Like you can see the blurring here. And I really like that effect. I remember I had a critique in college where I had two photo professors critiquing this image I took of a watermelon, and it was kind of surrounded by the watermelon like greenery, the vines, and they were thrown off by the aperture, the depth of focus, because some of the leaves were in focus and some of them weren't, just because of how close they were to the camera. And they were very fixated on it during the entire critique, but I like when it I like when there's overlap and you can tell when things are closer or further away. I think it's fun. Yeah,
I agree. So tell us what else you want to do with this image.
Okay, so I should probably, let's do that now. I'll do the camera. Let's see, smart filters. Where is that? Let's do smart, oopsie, object. We're gonna convert this to our smart object. Let's work on the shadows now. Smart object sometimes takes a little bit longer. It's one of the more intense filters for my sad computer. But yeah, oops, here. But we'll be adjusting the, in anticipation of printing on matte, we'll want to be bringing up the shadows back there for sure. And then, let's see. Sorry, what were you saying, Lisa?
No, yeah, I mean, you answered my question. So it sounds like we are planning to bring up the shadows because we're printing on matte, right? And you said the matte paper tends to muddy up the shadows.
Yeah, it gets, I mean, even that is, it's interesting because you can see how, like up here, it's still very dark up here, but when we go in camera raw, you can see a lot more information in there. It's, I'll zoom in for people. There's so much more information there. So it's not like it's just obsolete, but if we were using a low res scan, I don't think there would be any information for you to even pull from. But yeah, we'll probably max that out and play around with this.
And for those who are just joining, we are here with Dana Chang, editing lifestyle photography in Photoshop. And she's showing us how she processes her images with the anticipation to print. And we'll go over printing tomorrow in our part 2 session, which begins at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time.
I'm just bringing up some of these, some of the brightness too, as well. Oh yeah, I turned this off. Because I was noticing that now my mom's dress is very funky looking in her hair. So I'll be painting this in, so I'm inverting that. So I just kind of want to paint in some of this missing information here. And looks a little crazy right now, but let me turn down the opacity a little bit. So yeah, you can see how that just helped bring out those shadows a lot more. Let me just, for fun, let's just bring in this garden portrait JPEG. This is the one that I got from Photo Lab. There's some shadows here. Let's see. I'm just very curious to see how this converts also, because I never actually have done this smart object on a low-res JPEG. Wow, that that took no time at all, as opposed to on the other one. Let's see. Oh, wow, look at that. You can actually get some good stuff. Oops, oh God. That's like Twilight Zone mom. Okay. So you can.
Imagine sending a print of that to her.
I know. Mom, thinking of you. I miss you. I don't think she would be happy with that. Okay, so you can get, a good bit of information still. Camera Raw is pretty cool. Photoshop, thank you.
Yeah, Camera Raw is awesome. And for those who don't know, the same editing engine in Camera Raw is also in Lightroom.
Oh, it is?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. Wow, I really need to get into Lightroom.
Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, we'll find out tomorrow, but Lightroom Classic has a dedicated print module. And I know a lot of
Oh,
people
right, it does.
love printing in that.
Uh-huh.
But I can't wait to see your process and how you print with Photoshop.
Yeah, I've never once printed through Lightroom. There's some other settings for Lightroom because I feel, doesn't it provide you with layouts too for different types of prints, or am I totally imagining that? I feel like it allows you to set up the print in a certain way.
Yeah, it's pretty advanced. And maybe I can pull it up in just a second. But
no, I would love to see. Can you share?
Yeah. Let me get that set up. But in the meantime, you can walk us through tell us what I'm
doing.
Yeah.
So this is the resolution of the scan that I got from Photolab, which is my go-to lab in the East Bay. Shout out to Photolab on, what is it, 6th Street? It's near 4th Street. But this resolution, 72 DPI, which really, again, if you're posting to Instagram, DPI doesn't really matter so much. You could, generally I like to just keep it at 350 just because I'm used to it, but you could turn it down to 72. But when you're printing, you always want your DPI to be at least 300. Otherwise, it's going to look super grainy and weird. And it might still anyways. So we're just going to bump this up to, let's say 300. Resample. Yeah, so this is the size that it recommends for this resolution image, which is 3 by 4 inches, which is kind of like a postcard. It's smaller, but so that's, you could try to scale it up, but it gets really like crunchy and grimy and weird. So yeah, again, high res always. But yeah, the color balance is pretty nice. Her face looks a little bit bright, but that's good to know. I need to adjust some of the cools. So that's, again, a good reference point for me is to go back to kind of, because the photo labs, so they will color correct all of your scans for you. So they'll be pretty nice, but yeah, I'm like, oh my God, this is different than how I remembered it. Yeah. So we're just gonna go back into this.
So Dana, how do you know when you're done? Like, how do you know you're done editing an image before you print?
Usually I can, at this point, visualize I can troubleshoot some issues with printing in advance. So I'll try to make sure that I take care of all of those things that I can immediately recognize before I even start printing. And so that's kind of what we're doing right now, is like, especially with these shadows, it's making sure that you bring some of that back in there. And I'll have to readjust the opacity and whatnot. So it doesn't look like random splotches of blue. But I think, I mean, part of it is me sitting with the image overnight too. And so I will be revisiting these after our stream and just tweaking them before we even start printing tomorrow a bit. And we'll even be tweaking a bit tomorrow. But we'll also be doing test print runs. And so part of setting up a test print is just grabbing different parts of prints that you expect will be problematic. And so I'll probably select like this section so that I can see the shadows and the highlights, and I'll just grab that. I'll merge the layers so that it's easier to pull. I'll grab that section, and then I will, probably grab my mom's face because I want to make sure that that's in focus. And so I want to see how that looks at scale with focus. And then I'll grab something with like a lot of highlights. Just so then I can see that I'm not blowing out or that it looks still realistic. And And so you just kind of want to pick and choose. And I forgot to mention, a lot of this information I learned from one of my favorite professors from Micah, Jay Gould. I'll have to send him the stream later. I don't know if he's on now, but he's a very talented photographer, and I took his class in the fine art of digital printing, and it was like the most helpful class that I've ever taken, and very fun also. But test prints are definitely a must. And so even if I'm not like if I'm pretty sure that a print is done and I'll do a test print, that'll be an indication for me if it doesn't go the way that if I notice things in the test print that don't go well, then I'll have to readjust them in the actual print. And then let's see. And then once the little samples look pretty good, then I will go ahead and do one version of a large print. And you don't really want to print a bunch of 24-inch prints, because that's a good way to eat up all of your ink. So that's why and also your paper, paper is kind of expensive too. So you definitely want to kind of do little batches to make sure that you're all good to go. But yeah, it's definitely a process.
So you're printing a bunch of little pieces of like different parts of the image. So like the shadowy tree, the leaves in the top corner, your mom's face.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So that's all. That's a good way to kind of get a idea of where you're at without using all of your resources.
Cool. What else do you have left to tweak in this image?
Let's see. I guess I could kind of take out this thing that I used to weigh down. I kind of wonder how Clone Stamp will handle something like this. I wonder if I need to, let's see. I'm kind of scared to do anything to the smart filter. Oops. No. Maybe I'll do this. And let me just merge this. Or rasterize, I guess. Yeah. Just for our needs. I'm just curious to see how Photoshop handles content aware on this thing. I find that it's usually pretty smart, but it might try to, because it's at 49%. Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I'm zoomed out, like, would I know? Probably not. Let me know in the comments below if you think that you would notice. But like, come on.
Yeah, looks pretty good to me.
The only thing I could think of is maybe, no, it's pretty good. Photoshop is, the content aware tool has gotten really smart over the last few years even. And yeah, I remember when it first became a thing, it was like, oh my God, this changes everything.
It's really incredible. And it's
Do you have that in Lightroom as well?
Not currently.
Oh, is it in development?
It's something we want to add. Yes.
Okay. It's trade secrets. I don't want to. I don't want to mess with some NDAs.
This is a recorded session, so
yeah. We'll speak offline.
I have a question from Mo. What is your favorite method for shading an object? Do you use drop shadow or do you use anything else?
Like adding a shadow. I kind of like doing that manually, to be honest, like painting it in. I guess I'm kind of all manual when it comes to my editing. That's what I'm realizing now. Photoshop has these like great tools that you can use, like drop shadow. I think I just prefer being able to control a little bit more based on my own intuition. But I mean, like, I guess I can show an example of, let's see, we can go, oops, not that. Let's do an incognito window.
How about everyone in the chat? Do you like to do things manually, or do you like to use the drop shadows? What's your method? I'm curious to know as well.
Yeah, like these, I shot these on white, And I ended up, there's some natural shadows that were in here. I didn't use like a clipping path on these images. And I kind of just painted in with a very soft brush back in some of the shadows. And I find that that's acceptable for like my needs. I know some people will do like clipping paths and then add in shadows, but I like when it looks more natural, personally, and that's for me the more natural way to go. But I'm sure I want to know what other people do too. Yeah, I think this might be a painted in shadow, like an artificial shadow on this one. I'm trying to remember, but yeah, this is my product photography if anyone's curious. Very specific genre of images. But yeah,
These are so cool.
the product images,
they really pop. They like really come to life. And looking at the image, I would be like, wow, that is like such a bold image. But then seeing the process of like all the little details and the time that you spend to retouch and get those shadows perfect, manually too. It just makes the image even more amazing. Something as simple as like a fork, right? A fork and a knife. Didn't realize it could look so cool.
Yeah, I find that this editing process is, and we had talked about this too, but the editing process of film lends itself to kind of the feeling that you get when you take a picture with a film camera, where it's like you really, there's so much care, there's so much thought. It's, I think in modern day photography, and this is something that I participate in as well, but it's so easy to capture images like right in a row, one after another, and not have as much thought into it. And that, I think that's why in my personal work I prefer to take more time to be like, to sit with the images and like think about it as like art, instead of like content or product, I guess. But yeah, I
totally feel that. It's like you're developing a relationship. It's like a person. You're spending a lot of time with someone, getting to know them, getting to see their flaws. And it definitely makes the experience more special. We have a lot of people in the chat who also vote for manual shadowing. Bianca,
great.
Cody, Michael.
Sweet. Nice to hear that from Cody. I think I knew that for Bianca too. See. Oh, looks like I already did a level of layer of levels on here. I think Cody is maybe in the same building as me right now, but he might be just below. So that's funny that he's on the stream. I'll have to debrief with him after.
So, are you going to be color balancing and touching up this image now?
Yes. Oh, sorry. I should be narrating a little bit more as I go. Yeah, I'll be color balancing this. This one also has this major shadow issue. It's because it's half in shadow, half in sunlight. This is an image of my mom giving my grandma a haircut. They have very similar haircuts, but I think my mom knows how to give my grandma a haircut, and I don't think my grandma knows how to give my mom a haircut. So it's maybe a one-way street in that way. But I'll be color balancing this. I'll be bringing in the information over here a little bit more. And I also have this image here. If we can go to full screen mode. Here, I have printed here, and I already know also from printing this that the hair is very dark, and that back corner is also very dark. And so I'll want to make sure that we can bring that out. And then I also remember that there's focus on the hair here and less focus on the scissors. So I'm going to bring in focus back on scissors as well, but also, maintain focus here. And then I'll be doing similar dust spotting.
And when you say bring back the focus, are you talking about clarity, sharpening?
Yeah, so I'll be sharpening. Yeah, exactly. I think there are some pretty advanced Photoshop tools for adjusting focus in post. I think I just read some article on it, and I should have refresh my memory right before this on what it is, but I'm pretty sure that there is some feature that's in discussion now about adjusting focus in Photoshop. It's kind of, oh, maybe it was like portrait mode in, God, I'm kind of curious. Am I allowed to look it up?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess we don't have too much time left. I'll do incognito.
Anyone else in the chat know? Call it out if you do.
This Justin Bieber's concert photographer thing I bookmarked. What is it? Photoshop. Is it focus? Oh, let me do it on Google. I've been using this other browser that apparently plants a tree for every 40 searches you do, and I don't. Everyone's making fun of me for using it. Seems kind of hokey.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I heard about it in a environmental podcast, and so no, it's not this.
Quick call out. We have 5 minutes left.
Okay, I'll stop. Yeah, I'll go back.
So everyone, 5 minutes left with Dana this morning. Put in your last questions into the chat, and we'll go ahead and answer them and discuss them.
Or if anyone knows about that focus thing, depth of field, maybe. God, I gotta look in my. I think I cleared my history though. Ah, God, gonna have to do a deep dive.
No worries. If you want, I can quickly show the print module for
Oh
Lightroom
yeah,
Classic.
please do. Yeah.
Well, we have a few minutes left. Give me 1 second. Okay, I'm sharing my screen now. Hopefully that will show up. Or switch over. I think your screen might still be showing.
Yeah, I'll keep editing as we wait for that.
Okay. Yep, I think it's cool. So everyone, this is not Photoshop, this is Lightroom Classic. This is what I use. Also, hi, I'm the product manager. And I just wanted to quickly show, this is what the print module looks like. Dana, if you can see it, you're right. There are a ton of layout settings you can use and adjust. Layout, image settings, zoom to fill, repeat 1 photo per page. You got a border, showing guides. You can also include your identity plate.
Ooh.
Background color, watermarking, photo info, font size, and sharpening, print resolution. Yeah, so it's pretty sophisticated, and you can also use templates here on the left. Lightroom has a bunch of templates. If you want to print several images, you can also create your own.
Wow, awesome. Can you make custom, can you make it like a custom size paper? So if I'm just curious, I'm printing on a roll tomorrow, and that's a preset paper size, but can you customize the paper size?
I will check on that, or we can check after this.
Okay.
And we can and we can answer that question tomorrow. But good question. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and send it back to you, Dana.
Okay, cool. Sweet. Thanks for sharing that. That's really interesting. I was just printing some promo cards the other day, and I was doing it manually in Photoshop, and I was thinking, man, it would be a little bit easier if there were a template for this, as opposed to me kind of dragging and dropping and saying like, I'll just shift it over a little bit. But yeah, a template would definitely have made that so much easier. So I'll do that next time I print promos. Okay, let's do.
Okay, we have, 1 more minute left.
1 minute.
Yes. So.
Oh my gosh.
Quick announcement, because we will be cut off at 11:26, unfortunately. So Dana, if you have any last comments you want to share about this photo, and then I will share the closing remarks.
Nothing specific to this image, but it's been really fun, and I'm amazed at how quickly time has passed. Wow, yeah, it's been 2 hours. It's been a lot of fun.
It was so awesome. Yeah, I am now craving lemonade. But thank
Yeah.
you so much to everyone for joining in, whether it's morning, evening, from all over the world. We were so lucky to have you, and we're so lucky to have Dana here share her Photoshop process as she edits lifestyle photography. And please tune in tomorrow for part 2, where she will show us her printing process. So very excited. That's tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time as well. And don't forget, stay tuned for the Illustrator Daily Challenge, Creative Challenge, that is immediately following this stream. So stick around. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thanks so much for joining. See you tomorrow.